MC for tonight's event. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We also have Del Trube. Del is the last of Chris Lugenbuehl's dad's generation. So Del, thank you so much for being here. God bless you. Before we begin, let's have a word of silence and prayer for all those who have been impacted by Hurricanes Helene and Milton. It has been a brutal couple of weeks. I think we all have family and friends who live in Florida and the Southeast. It's just been a nightmare. So can we have a word of silence? Dear Lord, we pray that you would please show yourself very, very present and strong in millions of people's lives who have been decimated by these back-to-back hurricanes and all the tornadoes. It's been brutal the last couple of weeks, so we ask, Lord, that you would be with them and that you would provide for them and that many people would mobilize and help in their time of need. Amen. So it's my honor and privilege and joy to introduce Chris Lugenbuehl, co-founder of BPS.
I'm just so grateful to be here tonight and see so many of my friends and other people I don't know, but I want to meet you. I guess the story could start like this. I was born in Manchester Hospital and raised just a few miles from Ellington. I have had a 65-year connection with Union Church, and 33 years ago, I co-founded Become Part of the Solution, which began in 1991. I am delighted that Union Church is hosting this event. Thank you so much. Thank God, and thanks everyone for coming. Port TV did 3 TV spots on my involvement, 2 with Become Part of the Solution. We had one program they did that we were helping men in sober houses, one with women in sober houses, and the other one that we had was with the sea turtle. In 1981, Tom Carr from Yale planted the seed to track sea turtles. I founded the David E. Lugenbuehl Institute in honor of my father David. We needed a key scientist and seagoing resources to implement tracking. I met Dr. James Latilla through Yale, and he became our scientific director. I then introduced Jim to George Mendoza, and the first ever tracking of a leatherback turtle began. Jim will share more about that journey in a moment. In 1989, I met Greg Marshall at a sea turtle symposium. I connected Jim with Greg, which led to the use of the Crittercam on a leatherback turtle. Greg will share more about that journey later in tonight's presentation. And they've come a long ways to do this presentation. I'm so grateful to both of them. And so, the 3 of us have been collaborating for 36 years. Jim and Greg came to Rockville tonight to speak at no charge. And thanks to all of you for coming tonight. There are many other things you could have been doing on a Friday night, but you chose to come here. I really appreciate your support. God bless you all. Thank you.
Rob, if you could play that Crossroads TV segment, that would be terrific.
Good morning and welcome to Crossroads Magazine. I'm Father John Gatsack. Thanks for joining us. Pleasure and pain are part of human life. While we usually cannot stop something painful from happening, the loss of a loved one, the ravages of cancer, or other diseases, we all have the power to choose how we let that pain affect us. Do we let it define us? Or will we use it as an opportunity to learn, grow, and look at things differently? On today's show, we're going to focus on people who, through the grace of God, have been able to channel the pain and the frustration in their lives into doing good works. We'll start by meeting an organization that helps recovering alcoholics and addicts get into sober housing. And then we'll go to the movies to learn about a boxer turned priest who went from troublemaker to prison minister. For many people struggling with drug or alcoholic dependence, The road to recovery can be fraught with slip-ups or even full-blown relapse. Let's see how one organization gives former alcoholics and substance abusers a better chance at recovery by sponsoring their stays in sober housing.
I come from an alcoholic family. My mom was a full-blown alcoholic. I was introduced to powder cocaine in high school, so I ended up getting into trouble. I got arrested in West Hartford. It was quite a bit of cocaine, and then from there I got addicted to heroin. And I was in and out of prison for a while. I had an infection in my blood, and I had a 30% chance of living. I got out and I gave it a go, but it didn't take. It didn't take the first time. That was a little over 5 years ago. And then I was another 6 months in a rehab facility learning to walk again. And I didn't want to live that way anymore. So through all this, I stayed connected with Chris, and I got out of the hospital. I didn't really have a place to live, but I was able to walk. I was getting stronger and better, but mentally I was a lot stronger. And I used BPS. He came to me to sponsor me. He put me into a sober house in Enfield.
John believes that sober house saved his life. And with no job and no insurance, he couldn't have afforded it on his own. That's where Become Part of the Solution stepped in. Co-founder Chris Luganbuehl understands the unique challenges former addicts face, being a former one himself.
We want to help people if they want help. You know, we don't want to be the enablers, but if we find someone that's really sincere and trying, we want to be there to help them. You know, there's a saying: you don't want to slip. You don't go to slippery places. You need a safe place. You want a place where there's accountability. You know, there's a place where you're not alone. You're going through with people that are like-minded, same situation you're in. A place where there's drug testing, a place where there's house meetings, a place where there's accountability, a place where, you know, get out and get a job. You know, places like that. Those are the places we want to support.
Well, at first I was like, who's this guy coming into the room trying to hug me? That's the first thing I thought, because I didn't know who he was. He has a key phrase, the primary purpose, that, you know, everybody has to have a primary purpose. So I think once you find your primary purpose in life, you can learn to build.
What do you think the primary purpose is?
One was, for me, was forgiveness, forgiving myself. Another is I have a beautiful 11-year-old daughter. And she deserves better. She deserves a father. She deserves someone to protect her, not someone to consume. I consumed everything around me for so many years. Sometimes when you get clean, you can turn it around and use all that energy and passion to do the right thing. And sometimes doing the right thing is doing nothing at all. So I just try to live each day a little bit better than the day before. I didn't have responsibilities before. My responsibility was to get drunk and high. And if anything came after that, great. But if it didn't, it didn't. But as long as those two priorities were met, everything was fine. And today, so many other things come first. And with me, it starts with just thanking God in the morning that I'm awake. Because without that, what else do I got for the rest of the day? BPS gave me that buffer zone to sit back and take a look at myself, start getting clarity, have my head clear a little bit. The physical addiction started to go away, and then you got to deal with the whole mental. And sometimes that's a lot more difficult than the physical. But they gave me the opportunity to step away from my old lifestyle, to value myself as a person, and to realize that I do have a right to be happy. you know, and I do have a right to succeed in life and to be at peace, and I finally have that today. It's an awesome feeling to know that there's help out there. The thing is, if people don't make other people aware that there is help out there, a lot of people will just keep doing the same thing.
I believe he knows when people are ready and we're going sincerely to him, good things happen. You know, good things happen. We know that our motives are true. It was never about getting a salary or making anything. It was about helping our brothers and sisters in need unconditionally. And when we do that, they really feel the hand of God, because we're not looking for anything from them. We want to see them make it, you know? So that's why I do what I do. And I'm grateful to be still alive myself. It's 43 years since my last drink, so, you know, I'm grateful.
In the coming weeks, we'll visit Recovery 12 from New London and see how their organization is also helped by Become Part of the Solution. To learn more about Become Part of the Solution, visit our website, ortv.org, and click on Crossroads Magazine under the Links tab.
Thank you, Chris. Well, in your program, our first speaker after Chris will be Dr. James Patilla, and I'll read his bio on page 3 of the program. He is the chair of the Leatherback Trust. He has been studying and saving sea turtles since 1978, when he led a team that successfully completed the first sonic and radio telemetry study of sea turtles. They measured the body temperature of swimming green turtles at Tortuguero, Costa Rica, and discovered that they exhibited regional endothermy, keeping their muscles warm while swimming. In 1980, his team discovered the temperature determined the sex of incubating embryos of green sea turtles. The cover article published in Science magazine revolutionized the way that scientists thought about sex determination and conservation of sea turtles. Jim has published over 200 scientific articles and trained 96 master's and PhD students, as well as numerous undergrads. He was the Betts Chair Professor of Environmental Science at Drexel University and served as Chief Environmental Scientist for the Department of the Army in the Clinton administration. In 1994, he and Frank Palladino helped establish Parque Nacional Las Pueblas, sorry, I probably butchered that, in Costa Rica. In 2000, they established the Leatherback Trust to help consolidate the park and save leatherback and other sea turtles. He has also led a project on the biology and conservation of giant pandas in China. What an interesting life this man has lived. So please give a warm Rockville welcome to Dr. James Spatilla.
Right on time. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to tell you about the work we've done saving sea turtles and the connection with Chris Luganville. Next slide. No matter how bad things get, I got this card for Father's Day from my grandchildren because I fix things. If you got duct tape, there's always hope. And that's the attitude you have to have in conservation. Next slide. You know, you haven't seen this picture, you will. This is the famous turtle that Chris's father brought in from Long Island Sound, and that event, which was sad for the turtle, has led to where we are today. Next slide. So we started out with green turtles. If you hit the button, it should say green turtle. Do the next thing, you see what happens. There you go. So my first work was green turtles. Now, we're going to tell you about turtles, but this is also about people and about luck, happenstance, what do you want, the hand of God, whatever. I studied green turtles by accident. Let's see the next slide and see what that says. All right. I got to go on an expedition with this gentleman on the left, Archie Carr, who started sea turtle conservation and biology. Next slide. Those are mosquito cays, fishermen in Nicaragua that we were working with. I got to go on this boat called the Alpha Helix, which was a research boat. I got to go because I did one of the smartest things I ever did as a faculty member. I skipped a committee meeting. You know, if you're a faculty member, a teacher, or whatever, you're in a business, you gotta have meetings. You gotta have meetings. Why do you have to have meetings? Well, because if you have meetings, then the people who make decisions, if you have a meeting about it, they let you think that you actually had an effect. So there was a meeting about space or person, I don't know what it was, equipment. And there was a talk over at the other campus at the University of Buffalo. I was at the State College, and there's a talk about sea turtles. And I like sea turtles. I never did sea turtles. So I thought, should I go to the meeting that I'm supposed to go to or go to the talk? So I skipped the meeting and went to the talk. And Henry Brang from Indiana was giving the talk about the physiology of green turtles. And he said, oh, he's gone on the Alpha Helix expedition. And they're going to do physiology, and they'd like to track turtles, but nobody can make that work. People tried to do it for 30, 40 years. It couldn't work. So afterwards, at the coffee, I went up to him and said, oh, you know, I'm Jim Spatilla. I can do that. I do that now, you know, on alligators and stuff. So he said, okay, come on the expedition. Now, actually, I couldn't do anything because I was a professor, but I had a graduate student at the University of Georgia who could make 8-channel sonic transmitters and radio transmitters. So I called Ed Sandora up and said, hey, Ed, you want to go to Costa Rica with me as my assistant? Oh, yeah, what do I have to do? I said, well, make some of those transmitters. You can come. So we go. Let's see the next slide. What's that? We go to the research station called Casa Verde at an old building. Let's see the next slide. We work with the turtle biologist. Archie is in this picture someplace, and Marjorie Carr is in the center. And the bananas, very key because there was never enough food there. Next slide. There's Archie. We caught green turtles and we brought them into the kitchen when the cook, Miss Junie, wasn't there because she was chasing us away at night. We did it at night. You can see we put that orange package on. That's a sonic transmitter and lines measuring the temperature of the turtles. Next slide. Then we had to go out and follow the turtles, so we got this old raft. That's Bob Foley, my former student, who's getting set. Let's see the next slide. And then launched through the surf and it capsizes. You have a lot of adventures. And I took the pictures and stayed on shore. Because they could swim better than I could. Next slide. Eventually they got out there as Ed Sandor tracking the turtle for the first time. Very exciting. Well, it would never happen if I hadn't skipped that silly meeting. So, that was a good choice. Next slide. Then, I get a phone call from this guy in Connecticut. Chris Luganville calls me up. Oh, I heard about you tracking turtles. I want you to come and do a leatherback. Who's this guy? I remember. He's got an institute. He's got an institute. Let's look him up. Can't find anything about him. There's no police record. That was good. I had my brother check. He's a lawyer, so you know, Better Business Bureau. Oh, we didn't find anything bad about him, so we came out over. And that's George Mendoza. So there's another happenstance. Next picture. Next slide. We go out with George on his boat. He catches fish. Next slide. And they also catch a leatherback turtle. And so we studied the leatherback turtle. We put a transmitter on it. Next slide. And again, it's a matter of people. All those people connection. There's Chris. There's me. Bob Shoup. And John Kynan. Now, only 2 of those people are left, and they're both here today. Bob Shoup, I can't remember. Do you remember what Bob passed away from? What was it? Yeah, but what? You remember? It's cancer or something like that. And John passed away from drinking too much. Caught his liver, like 45 years old. So that's how we did on John's boat. We did that first tracking of a leatherback turtle. Next. Published it in a journal, which is important if you're a professor and to tell the world what you did. So that was really how I got involved with leatherback turtles. Next slide. Oh, that's the data. They go up and down in the water. That's the slide. That's how much. Then we kept getting involved. This guy on the right is Frank Palladino, my former student. And on the left of the picture is Bibi Santandrian, who was a student who came from Spain to work with us. Again, people. Frank is bugging me. He said he didn't get to go to Costa Rica in '78. He was always upset. He was my best student, he said, at Buffalo State College. He didn't get to go. He wanted to go. He says, let's go study leatherback turtles. We got credentials. So we went to Tortuguero to study leatherback turtles. Let's see the next slide. There's Frank with a more recent picture with a hawksbill turtle. Let's see the next slide. And there's another guy coming out of the cave here on Crete. This is Hal Avery. Hit the button, we'll get the next thing. See if we get a better picture of him. Did it show up? Yeah. That's Hal, who was another of my students who studied freshwater turtles and leatherbacks, who helped us out. Let's see the next slide. And Mario Bosa, when he found out we were studying turtles, he was the vice minister of the environment. He founded the national parks of Costa Rica. Next slide. With the guy on the right, Alvaro Galde, 2 college students who started the national parks of Costa Rica, which are now world-renowned for conservation. Mario says, oh, you scientists, you have to come over to the Pacific coast where there's lots of leatherbacks. We need you to study the leatherbacks. All right, so we said, okay, we'll come over. And we start measuring the metabolism of a turtle. Why would you measure the metabolism of a turtle? Who really cares about the turtle's physiology? We had a great idea. The leatherback is the biggest reptile that you can study. There's a bigger reptile called the big Nile crocodile or saltwater crocodile, but they'll eat you. And we didn't have enough students. Because you can get the students to work. And we weren't allowed to really dispose of students at that time. They paid tuition. All right, fine. So we're going to study the leatherback. Here's our leatherback. You can see it's different from a regular turtle. Next, we'll go through a few. They have that streamlined shell. They swim fast. Next slide. They dig a nest with their back flippers down about 60, 80 centimeters and lay about 60 to 80 eggs. Next slide. They're about the size of a tangerine or small orange. Throw sand around, they go away. Next slide. 50, 60 days later, come out the little hatchlings. Let's go through a couple slides. You can see them come out. Next slide. Here they come, next. And then they run down to the ocean and they swim away. And they come back in, we thought, 15 years. Next slide. So this is how we caught the turtle. This is 1990. That's Ed Jalowski, another student. He's a professor at North Texas State now. Just tell the turtle to walk onto a cargo net. Dive it onto the net. There's a rare picture of me, I'm working. Next slide. Wrap it up. There's a whole bunch more students there. And then weigh it, because you need the weight of the turtle. Next slide. Here we're weighing the turtle with a tripod and scale and all that. Next slide. Then you put a mask on it. And we made a mask out of a 5-gallon water jug and duct tape. Remember the importance of duct tape. Wrap it up. And a valve on there, so it breathes in that thing you can see, and then breathes out into a big bag, weather balloon bag. We collect a bag of gas from the turtle. Next, we take it back to the, there you go, walk it around the beach. That's Frank and me walking the turtle. Again, it's exercise. Next slide. That's the lab, such as it is. And there's a gas meter there like you have in your house, and an oxygen meter and a carbon dioxide meter. So you get this bag of gas, push it through the meters, you get volume, you get the percent oxygen left, the breath going out, and the amount of carbon dioxide produced. And you know the carbon dioxide content of the air, and you know that of oxygen, and then you can do some computations and calculate, if you know the weight of the turtle, its metabolic rate. Next slide. And there it is. The high values of the turtle walking around on the beach, and the low values of the turtle just laying there before she lays her eggs. Different sized turtles. So that was great. So the reason we did it, now we want to publish it. How could you who's going to publish the story of the turtle metabolic rate? Like the journal of something in Vernon, Connecticut, maybe? No, we want to publish in the best journal, Nature. So what did we do? We wrote a paper about the metabolic rate of dinosaurs as measured by turtles. It's big like a dinosaur. It migrates from Costa Rica to the Grand Banks, or from the other side of Costa Rica to Peru or the South Pacific, so it goes as far as dinosaurs did. They exercise the same. They have a warm body temperature from our measurements of that, just like a dinosaur. So does it have a high metabolic rate like a mammal? No, it has a low metabolic rate. So nature thought that was pretty cool, so they published it. So we got to be more famous. Next slide. This was the key mistake in our science. What you're supposed to do as a scientist, publish in a big journal like Nature, move on to another animal that nobody studied. Do another quick study, get another paper, become more famous. No. Mario says work on the beach. So since 34 years, we've been on this silly beach studying turtles and conserving them. It's all your fault, because you started. At Parque Nacional Las Baulas, and on the picture on the left is the author, Mary Alice Monroe, who was on our board of the Leatherback Trust. From the Library of Congress, Maggie Cruzy, not my wife. That's another whole story. Anyway, they've been working with us for a number of years. Let's see the next slide. Now, it's down in Costa Rica. You can see the map and the arrow pointing to the green country. Costa Rica, not as some of my friends say Puerto Rico. No, it's between Nicaragua and Panama. Next slide. It's the land of volcanoes. Let's see the next one. That's what it looks like. All the orange parts are the volcanoes. Has lots of national parks. Next slide. We're working on the Pacific coast, and hit the button for the next slide. It'll come an arrow. That's where the park is. And then the next slide. I hit it again, and we should see right there, that's Playa Calvial, another beach we work on. Okay, next. So 1995, this got made into a park. Mario had got a presidential decree in 1990, 91. That's why we started working there. But a presidential decree can be erased by another president. So in this country, the president can make a national monument, as President Obama did out in Utah. The next president can come along and decide to get rid of it, as President Trump did, Escalante monument. So that's in the courts now. Can the president undo another president's monument, national monument? Well, in Costa Rica, the next president, Oscar Arias, I think it was, decided to eliminate the park because his brother-in-law owned land that he wanted to build a hotel on. So we made a big stink about it. We thought, well, we got to make a law, because you can't change a law as easily. Next slide. So we started a whole campaign. And here, in this town, there's a letter from one of the kids writing President Calderon to make a park. And we lobbied. We don't lobby. We educate. We educated the Congress, and got all kinds of people involved, and we did all this effort to make a park. Next slide. We asked for help because we weren't having success despite all the children's letters. So we got help from this next guy. Next slide. President Clinton. I wrote a letter to President Clinton. My brother who knew him, hand-delivered it to him. And he wrote a little note on it and told the ambassador of Costa Rica to tell the president of Costa Rica that he liked turtles and they should make a park. Now, after my many years of research and strenuous conservation efforts, for some reason, 3 months later, the Congress passed the law for the park. I think it was a coincidence of his letter. I think it was my work, actually. I keep thinking that. Next. So what do? We start doing research and education and conservation and community action. That's people on the beach digging up a nest. Next slide. And we make the park. There's two beaches. The close one is Playa Ventanas. The other one is Playa Grande. About 4.5 kilometers of beach that's saved. Next. That's what the park looks like, 75 meters from the high tide, the mangroves, and that hill in the far background. Next slide. That's what the beach looked like when we made the park in 1995. Next. There's the turtles nesting, lots of turtles. Next slide. We put pit tags in these turtles in their shoulders, just like you would a dog or a cat. so we can identify them positively so the tags don't fall off. Let's see the next slide. And what we found out when we started, there were 500 turtles nesting. That's sort of that first drop down around 1994, 95. Now we got 3 turtles nesting. Where'd all the turtles go is the question. Part of it's due to climate change, El Nino, the turtles don't get food and don't come back. Part of it's due to other things. Let's see the next slide. People used to take every egg off this beach and eat it. So they did that for 20 years. There are no new turtles coming out. That's one of the problems. The old ones die and there are no new ones. But another one is fishing. Let's go through leatherback case history. Next slide. Next click. There are 1.4 billion hooks put in the ocean a year in long lines, which are these 100-mile long line or 60 miles long. Every, 30 feet or 40 feet, they put a hook down about 20 feet to catch swordfish or tuna. Next. They catch 50 to 60,000 leatherbacks a year. Now, they don't kill them all. Some get let go. Next slide. So they were catching more than half the leatherbacks that we estimate were in the Pacific, which was about 20,000 times every year. A lot of them were dying. Next. About 10% of them died every year. You can it's fairly easy to do the calculation. If you lose 10% of your group every year, pretty soon you don't have anything left. That's what's been happening. Next slide. And then that problem when they took all the eggs. So we've been fighting that for a number of years. Now on this picture, you see some red dots. The red dots are places where they caught leatherback turtles in various fishing activities. You see down there in the blue ocean, those little black dots? That's where they fished. But if you look up there, the big black blob, those are all the little black dots stuck together. There's a lot of fishing going on out there. And so there's a lot of turtles that get caught. And what we have to do is get the fishermen to let them go. Hopefully they didn't drown before they pulled them up. That's the current problem in the ocean. So Frank and I, Palladino and I, formed the Leatherback Trust in 2000 because the government didn't buy the land that was supposed to be in the park. They just never appropriated the money. We missed that connection. Next slide. So we started doing conservation research and start raising some money for that. Next. We saved the land, the monkeys. Next. Howler monkey, birds. Next. Let's see the next one. That's what the beach looks like today. It looks the same because we raised about $5 million from donors. We got one donor to give us 2 and matched by another donor for 2. So we raised $5 million and helped pay for the land on the beach. We don't have it all, but we have quite a bit of the park land. Next. That's what it looked like when the beginning of the park, and then everybody started building on it. Next. So there were some houses originally at one end of the beach. Next. And plans to develop, kind of crude plans originally. Next. Then Century 21 got involved, and other international people. Next. And for a number of years, they sold property in the park, but they didn't really build much. So we did pretty well holding things off. But when people come, they bring their dogs. And they don't keep them on a leash, although it's illegal. And they dig up eggs. And they dig up hatchlings. That's not a good thing. Next. They also leave their garbage out, so you get more raccoons, and the raccoons then go on the beach. They put their lights on. So now we have to get them to turn their lights off. Next. And those rectangular areas, a little hard to see on there, but those are all the properties that we acquired for the park on that beach. Next. It's a close-up. So part was expropriated. We paid for that land. We bought that other piece. Next slide. We own the green parts, and the red parts became part of the park. Next. Then we trained a whole bunch of Costa Rican students, worked with us, came to Drexel for English language. That's Rodney Piedra. He is now a high person in the environmental ministry. His wife Elizabeth, we trained them, and they've been doing lots of work. We formed the Guides Association, the Ladies Association in the local village, all that kind of stuff. Next. Worked with the local school. Next. Brought in Judy Zabriskie from Wisconsin, who taught the kids drawing. And we took the kids to see turtles. They lived 5 miles away, never saw a turtle. We took them out to the beach. And every year we have a research team. This happened to be an all-female team some years ago. Second from the right is, go back. Can you go back? Yeah, Gabby Blanco, who now has her PhD. She's running a program in Argentina. On the far left, Tara Dornfield got her PhD out in California doing environmental education, and the others are in environmental education. Next. That's a recent team in our little biological station. Mixed Costa Ricans, Europeans, and Americans. We do a lot of outreach with the local community to teach them what we're doing. Next. And our theory is that if we protect the beach, the females will come back, some of them come back, and you got to have an aircraft carrier for your airplanes to land on. They'll come back eventually, so maybe it's not 15 years, maybe it's 30 years for them to mature. There's still juvenile turtles out there, we're waiting for them to come back. That's what we do. Let's see the next slide. Now, climate change is a problem. The lines go down, right? That's hatching success and emergent success. If we keep heating up the planet, it'll go from 50% to 20. Next slide. That's a better picture of it. Not a good thing. So now we're working on what do you do to cool nests on a beach. You put shade on them, you go out and water them. We're doing those experiments right now. We have experiments to what to do to convince the raccoons. I had a theory. We got raccoons on the beach eating the hatchlings and the eggs. So my solution was, kill the raccoons. Very straightforward. Bibi, remember I showed you a picture of Bibi? You don't want to hurt the raccoons, she'll send more raccoons will come. So I said, okay, shoot the people who are putting the garbage out. Nah, you can't do that either. Nobody takes my good suggestions. So instead we got a grant to educate people about don't put your garbage out, and we build raccoon-proof containers. I still think we should kill the raccoons so they don't pass on their bad habits to their offspring, but we're working on the other project. And then to get people to change their lights to turtle safer lights, amber LED lights. Next slide. That's the same thing. Let's see the next one. This might be close to the end. So that's what we do in Costa Rica. And we've been doing it for a number of years. It's involved educating lots of people, undergraduates, graduate students, the local community, outreach, giving people in the local community jobs so they have value in their lives, keeping these students busy and off the streets, and saving turtles. Let's see if there's another slide. I can't remember. Yeah, okay, here's the goal. The goal is for these young women, when they grow up and have children, for them to be able to bring the children to see the turtles. And the woman on the left got her PhD in pharmacy and just had her first child. So hopefully in a few years she'll bring them down and they'll still be turtles. But the whole thing is a connection. Somebody calls you on the phone, causes 35, 40 years of trouble. You skip a meeting, you meet other people, and it's all interaction. It's people besides, it's not just some imaginary science thing. And that's what you do to save turtles. You save turtles by saving people at the same time. So that's the connection. Hey, there's a clock. I could have been looking at that this thing. All right, I think that's it. We hope to make lots of turtles in the ocean and keep saving people. Thank you.
As a little gift, Jim is staying at Crystal Lake tonight. So we have a book, Crystal Lake, Tom County, a gift for you. It's a book about Crystal Lake.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This is the kind of thing that happens when it's involved in Crystal Lake. Spend 4 days driving to Connecticut, doing it from Connecticut. You buy your own gas, and you get to sing a little book.
Well, next on our agenda is Dr. Greg Marshall. And before I call him up, I will read his bio, which is on page 4 of your program. He is a National Geographic Society Fellow and Research Associate from Washington, D.C. He is an inventor, biologist, conservationist, and Emmy Award-winning cinematographer. Marshall has dedicated his life to studying, exploring, and documenting animal life in the world's oceans and across the globe. His most celebrated contribution to the scientific community is the invention of the Crittercam, a small, lightweight, streamlined camera that has the remarkable ability to travel unobtrusively with its animal hosts where no camera has gone before, capturing never-before-seen footage of the private lives of wild animals. In 1986, Greg was diving off the coast of Belize in Central America and encountered a shark. The shark approached him and disappeared with 3 quick strokes of its tail. Stuck to the shark's belly was a remora fish. As he watched the shark disappear, it occurred to him that if he could put a camera in place of the remora, he could learn about the shark's behavior. Inspired, he built the first Crittercam in 1987, and in 1989 he collaborated with Chris Luganbuehl to deploy the camera on a leatherback turtle in its natural habitat. Greg has led over 120 field expeditions worldwide, collaborating on behavioral studies of some 80 species, including turtles, penguins, whales, alligators, sharks, lions, and house cats. Yes! I'm a lifetime cat lover. In addition to publishing with his collaborators in major journals and publications, his Crittercam research has provided a dazzling library of imagery from the perspective of animals in the wild. This footage has been used in over 70 National Geographic films, including March of the Penguins. I remember taking my granddaughters to see that. A 13-part Crittercam TV series, and dozens of shorts on PBS's Wild Chronicles series. His films carry a strong conservation message. He has presented dozens of talks with National Geographic's Speakers Bureau and was featured in CNBC's 10 of the world's most coolest jobs. I believe that. He continues to explore new approaches to research and image making, and his mission remains to share the experiences of wild animals in ways that make their lives immediate and relatable to humans. And as you come up, Dr. Marshall, Rob, could you play that ABC News clip, the TV clip?
Finally tonight, nature as seen through the eyes of the animals. 20 years ago, a biologist wondered how sharks live when people aren't around to observe them. And out of that curiosity came the Crittercam, as it's known, a small waterproof video camera that's been used to study dozens of creatures. And right now, in Washington, scientists are sharing some amazing images. Here's ABC's Ned Potter.
An emperor penguin slides beneath the ice to look for food, and we get to go along for the ride. A penguin's eye view of life in the deep, including, watch this, a quick snack.
You're actually there with them without being obtrusive in their environment. You're seeing things that you'd otherwise never be able to see.
Greg Marshall of National Geographic is the inventor of Crittercam, the miniature camera that allows these remarkable views from the point of view of a sperm whale, or a sea turtle, or even a grizzly bear with her family.
Lens up in the front, battery immediately behind it, and then all the electronics toward the distal end here.
It's now been used to study 60 different species. It records picture, sound, temperature, and the location and movements of the animal wearing it.
This has scientific value. Absolutely, incredible scientific value. We're seeing things that we've never seen before.
And that knowledge may help save animals such as the Hawaiian monk seal, which has been dying out for lack of food. Biologists thought it hunted just offshore, but the camera showed that the seals look in much deeper waters.
Truly, it's pictures worth 1,000 words, and we would never have known what they're doing until we had the camera on their backs.
A Crittercam can be attached to an animal with a harness or even a suction cup.
Then it pops loose after a few days and floats to the surface and sends a signal for scientists to come get it.
We are now seeing a whole world of activity, animal behavior and ecology, that we would otherwise never have had the opportunity to experience.
An animal's life from the animal's point of view. Ned Potter, ABC News, Washington.
Boy, don't you want to see more of that. This is World News for this Thursday. I'm Charlie Gibson, and I hope you've had a good day. For all of us at ABC News, have a good one.
Thank you. I can project. I hope this is not too loud. Maybe if it is too loud, I'll count on the AV guy to tone it down a bit. Good, great to be here. Chris, wonderful to be here again. Thanks for the invitation. And I agree with Jim, wonderful to have that 50-hour drive up here. Seemed like a long drive up here. We were coming around New York City yesterday. It's a trip. I'm going to be talking about this crazy idea. It really is, in the beginning, it really was kind of a crazy idea that you could take a camera, deploy it, strap it onto the back of a wild, free-ranging animal and ride along with it into its world. There were very few people, in fact, two of the three people on the planet, who, not me, who thought there might be some potential in this idea are here this evening. And I want to thank them both for actually allowing me to ultimately to do what I got to do in my career at National Geographic. Without you guys, would not have happened. Might not have happened. I don't know, maybe made something happen, but it really did make a big difference. The yeses that you guys said to this crazy idea. I guess I need to advance the slides. Yeah. I have been with National Geographic in various capacities since 1991, when I got my first research grant. And then I went on and, became a staff at Geographic and a producer, an executive producer, and vice president, and basically got to pursue my dream of really studying animals in this brand new way. And it's been really pretty fulfilling. What's next one? Yep, 1986 changed my life. This is an actual photograph of the moment that, okay, but I had this experience. I was studying something completely different at the time, and I looked up from the animal that I was studying, and out of the blue swam this great big shark toward me. And this had happened plenty of times before, and it's a wonderful experience. You just love seeing sharks in the wild because it means that it's a healthy habitat, right? Well, in this particular occasion, I had just built the camera for a film that I was making about the work that I was doing, conservation film. I was in grad school, had no money, so I had to build my own underwater camera system. Well, I saw this shark with this remora, this suckerfish suckled onto its belly, and somehow in that moment, that camera that I had just built for the film, I could imagine transforming it into something that might look like that remora riding on the shark's back. And I really did have that moment, that moment of inspiration which said, maybe this is possible. Next slide. Maybe someday I'll be able to design and build a camera that looks and feels like a suckerfish so that we won't disturb the animals as we ride along with them, but we will thereby be able to see natural behavior evolve in this place that we have virtually no access to. It's really, really difficult to be out there. Next slide. Well, whatever you dream or whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness is genius, power, and magic in it. So I thought, what the heck, might as well try. Next slide. And this was the monstrosity. Actually, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That's Wayne Gretzky. I love that way of saying the same thing. You might as well go for it. Here's the beautiful, sleek, really elegant looking camera that I built. This was my first effort. And you can see that this is a captive turtle in a pen in Belize. I didn't want to work with a wild, free-ranging animal at this point. I had no idea really whether this would work at all biologically, whether the animals would tolerate having something on the back, let alone something as large and cumbersome as this first proto system that I could develop at the time. Lo and behold, though,
I learned probably the most important thing that I learned, well, certainly at that time, the one critical thing, and that was the turtle did not seem to care that it had this thing on its back. Even something as horrific as this, not horrific, even as something as big as this. It was slightly positively buoyant, so it didn't weigh anything for the turtle underwater. It had to float back to the surface when it came off the animal. So just slightly positively buoyant and as streamlined as I could make it at the time. She didn't care. Just didn't seem to care that it was there, and that gave me the hope and the nascent confidence, if you will, that this concept had merit for scientific research. Next slide. So, what do? I had no money. I was in graduate school. Actually, I was just finishing up graduate school at the time. So I got on the road and I started to talk to people about this idea. Next slide. Had no money though. So I also had to work at the same time. And inevitably, when you have no money, you sort of are willing to extend yourself to try to make things happen. Next slide. Fortunately, there are people on the planet who kind of see and can share this passion that I was developing. I really, at this point, had a huge passion to try to make this thing happen. And this lovely young lady was the first person really to say, hey, you're not entirely crazy, perhaps. And she's sitting up there, and unfortunately you guys can't see her, she's hiding on the balcony today. This is the picture back in 1989, I think, right? 88, perhaps. She and I have now been together since then, if you can believe that. And Birgit Boulayer, stand up and lean over the balcony. I honestly have to say that this whole adventure really could not have happened without all of what Birgit has done over the last 35 years. So thank you, Birgit. Appreciate that. I rarely get a chance to thank you. She's moved me along. She's in control of that. Okay. Nothing great in the world has ever been accomplished without passion. That is true enough. Next slide. Thank you for moving that along. There's someone else in this audience, obviously Chris, who shares this whole notion of, engagement. And next slide. Ever since that first meeting that I had with Chris at that same Sea Turtle conference back in 1989, where he saw the presentation that I gave for Zoomoid, and he said, listen, you need to meet this guy, Jim Spatula. Next slide. I have had a deep passion to get this stuff done. Oh yeah, I'm not crazy. My mother had me tested. Hopefully some of you guys have seen the movie, the show Big Bang Theory, right? But here's another crazy guy who was willing to put his reputation on the line to try to help make this stuff happen. You're really moving me along at this point, I can tell. Okay. Jim Spatula, again, thank you for saying, yes, maybe it could work. Maybe I will trust Chris. Maybe I will trust you, Greg, and we'll give this thing a shot. So we did. Back in first attempt was in St. Croix. Back in those days, this was believe it or not, this was the best way to deploy systems on the back of leatherback turtle with a great big harness. I spent months building this system in my bathroom, in my kitchen, only to watch the turtle lumber back into the ocean with its female. So we knew she'd come back up on the beach in, maybe a week or 10 days. Hopefully with the system, bringing the system back to us, back up on the beach. Tracked her through the night because there's a radio on there and you can track as they come to the surface, track, and then by morning, the signal disappeared. Gone. Okay, well, what's happening? So I turned to Chris, Jim, I don't know if you were there. You turned to Chris at that point and said, listen, we probably need to fly and see if we can recover. She's probably swum beyond the reception we have here on the ground. Somehow you made that happen. We got him in the air. Nothing. Most, difficult few hours of my life. Actually, it ended up being the most difficult, not the most difficult, one of the most difficult weeks of my life, because actually she did come back up on the beach about a week later. But no camera, no Crittercam system. No, the very first one was gone. And I discovered in that moment that I had been an idiot. Because a leatherback turtle, as Jim no doubt would have told me if I reached out to him, the last animal on the planet didn't want to actually start a research project like this with, because they can dive deeper than basically any animal on the planet, except for, a couple of whales. Terrible idea. But what do we do? Next slide. Success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. You remained enthusiastic, Chris, as you had for 35 years. Next slide. So what do? Foolishly? We went back, now this time to Playa Blanca, I think it was at the time, right? In Costa Rica. And this time, I failed again. I didn't even get this. The system didn't work when we got down there. And it was a complete bust for me. Complete bust for us, which was really, really difficult. Next slide. Chance favors the prepared. Keep going. Harder I work, the luckier I get. I was working really, really hard, and frankly, not getting very lucky. But I didn't give up. And I think that's the message of the evening, really. Just didn't give up. I couldn't help not thinking that this idea ultimately could work. When I got back to Costa Rica, I was pretty frustrated, and I decided to go ahead and do something a little different. I ended up going to a conference, meeting people. This one guy said, "Well, why do you have tan?" Well, only much of a tan, because I was stuck stuck underneath the shelter most of the time trying to bring my camera back to life. But he kept asking questions about, where I'd been. Okay, I just came back from Costa Rica. What are you doing in Costa Rica? You don't want to hear about that. I don't feel like talking about this. Well, he got the story out of me. And he said, this is kind of interesting. Again, one of those people, you mentioned it a little while ago, Jim, that, help you move forward. We all need that kind of help. And he said, let's have lunch. Come to my office at National Geographic. Happened to be a geographic producer, National Geographic, and said, I want to tell this story. This is, you sound like you've had a lot of challenges. It sounds like there are a lot of challenges ahead of you, but it's the kind of story that, really could have impact. If you can figure out how to do it. So I got my first research grant. I don't know if there's a picture of that. Next slide. There's not, but. And then I got a grant from Geographic in '91, and started to sort of get some help from National Geographic in designing systems that hopefully could survive the wilds. Well, they made a film about me called Crittercam, and we can talk about that later if you want, because I fought the whole idea of it being called Crittercam for a long time, because I didn't want it to be sexy, I wanted it to be science, right? So I had a whole different name for it. Anyway, John Bernard ended up making a film about it called Crittercam, and he called Crittercam. And this is one of the scenes in the film. I'll just play that real quick so give you a sense of the continuing challenges.
But I think that it's worth it because we are trying to find out more about the life of the shark, and our goal is to ultimately protect the shark.
But their goal will have to wait. To prove Crittercam, they still need to catch a shark, and that won't be happening on this trip. The last few days of fishing slip away in frustration. The expedition is over.
I guess I don't feel like I'm done, but I don't believe in fate. I don't believe in luck. I believe in making things happen. My dad always says, "Vom nichts kommt nichts." And that means, in German, it means, from nothing comes nothing. You have to make your own luck. You have to make it happen. And I'm going to make this happen. Yes, I did have brown hair at one time. It's true. Next slide. So with all the setbacks we have, it was necessary just to pick myself up again and try one more time. Science is not only the discipline of reason, but also one of romance and passion. I mean, it really is. You gotta love what you're doing, or you're not gonna make it happen. And the science element of it, just to wrap that in appropriately, I'm going to talk about emperor penguins real quick. We've got a phone call after I was at Geographic and had proven the concept in a variety, working with sharks, working with some turtles. I finally got a call from a guy at Scripps Institute of Oceanography about emperor penguins. He said, we've published papers on the diving pattern of emperor penguins, but we've had to make best guesses about what they're doing on those dives. And we don't like to make best guesses. We want to know the facts. We want to know the truth. And we want to know whether or not what we've published is accurate or not. So he invited me to participate in this expedition, and the Crittercam system by this point now is becoming what I had initially envisioned, right? It's got depth recording capability, it's got audio recording capability. We're in some cases we're recording the velocity of the animal, a whole variety of accelerometry, the movement of the animal in 3 dimensions through the water column. So it's really becoming a pretty sophisticated tool that incorporates visual elements into it, right? So next slide. In the case of emperor penguins, these red dots under there, they were sort of discarded as irrelevant bits of data for Jerry Clue and Paul Boganis, who published this data. They thought, it was not an important excursion, not an important part of the dive profile of these emperor penguins. Well, but they didn't want to conclude that, because I had never seen what was going on. So they invited me to come on, and this is what we did. Go ahead, next one. So, and I might have to click on that to get it to go forward as well. Yeah, there it is. Emperor penguins, if you guys haven't been to the Antarctic, go. Get there, find a way to get there, because it's an absolutely fabulous place. And I ended up spending quite a bit of time there, and we'll go back in a second. Anyhow, this is the very first deployments we did with these emperor penguins, where we built a little backpack with them, and then go in the water. Now, this water is sub-freezing water. I put dry suits on and spent at most 40 minutes in this Antarctic water, because it is very cold. By that time, you're more than ready to come out. These emperor penguins, on a single breath, can go for 40 minutes underwater. Sometimes an hour. They can if they need to. It's really remarkable what they can do. But what we were studying is, what about those excursions, those red dots underneath the ice? What do those mean? Well, it turns out, very quickly, we discovered the truth of it. And because you can see what's going on. The truth of it is that the penguins are diving deep, yes, but then they're looking up at the undersurface of the ice to silhouette their prey, and then racing up there and actually feeding there. They're doing just the opposite of what had been speculated, what had been thought to be the case. The thought had been, yes, they're diving down, they're feeding on schooling fish at depth. Well, no, in this habitat, under these circumstances, they're diving down so they can identify the prey above them, and that is where all that important biological function happens, namely the hunting, feeding, foraging. Immediately change the perspective, change the understanding of that dynamic in this environment. And I tell you this because it's kind of been the case with almost every species that we've worked with. We now work with 85 different species. And I can absolutely say that for most of those, we've discovered something fundamentally new about how they engage their environment, how they function and survive in their environment. I guess next slide. Well, this was the most recent system that we deployed. As you can imagine, we're taking advantage of advanced technology all the time and trying to make these systems as small and as discrete as possible so we can, A, have higher confidence that they're absolutely not disturbing the animals we're working with, and B, work with much smaller animals. In the beginning, I couldn't really envision working with much else besides the leatherback turtles because our systems at the time were just so big. Well, now these systems were deployed on bluefin tuna not too long ago, so it's now possible to do a lot more. Next. How are we doing for time, by the way?
Good.
Good?
Very good.
Okay, good. And it allows us to work in a variety of different habitats. Emperor penguins now, we work with them not just in controlled environments, but now going off into the high seas as well, which fortunately, like you may remember from the March of the Penguins film, they come back. They've got chicks that they want to come back to, so they bring the camera system back to us. Next. Turtles. We got to show some turtle stuff. So let me just go ahead and run this one. I'll talk through it. A couple different species we're dealing with here. And actually, I should credit Birgit specifically with this, the first clip that you'll see here. And I don't ever get a chance to thank you for this, credit you for this. These Mona Island, Puerto Rico. These are hawksbill turtles. Simple question, very simple question. How do males find females to procreate? How does the population reproduce itself? Well, so the female component of the population is usually the most precious, right? So you work with males to start with. So we have deployed Crittercam system of male turtles, and they never once found a female turtle, right? They're great at finding other males. You can tell it's another male by the long tail. Never once found a female turtle, so what the heck is going on? How's that population going to sustain itself, reproduce itself, if the males aren't finding females? Well, we eventually decided we had to deploy a Crittercam system on a female, and this is what she did for 3 days. She hid in a cave. So Jim, how does that mating system work? We still don't understand. Leatherback turtles, now Jim's going to correct me on this, but I'm going to tell you the story that I'm going to tell. Now you've had your chance, you don't have a microphone. Well, we really wanted to develop a way to deploy these systems without, with using suction cups, so we help to, promote that as much as we possibly could, because we want the animals to behave normally, right? Suction cup is totally benign. Question really was, these female turtles that are leaving the beach after laying these huge clutches of eggs, what energetically, and how do they sustain that effort energetically? What are they feeding on when they're right there offshore, before they come back on and lay the next clutch of eggs? 7 days later, a few days or so. Well, so that was sort of the question that we were trying to answer at that point. Turns out we never saw a female feed on anything. But what we did see was this. You can tell that that's a male turtle by, again, the long tail. Turns out the male turtles are, in fact, right there off the nesting beaches, interested in engaging in behavior. I see some kids in the audience, so be careful with the females. Prior to this, correct me if I'm wrong, this is where you absolutely correct me, because I really don't know the answer to this. But prior to this, my understanding is that Jim, not Jim specifically, but the scientific community thought most of the mating behavior probably happened offshore. The females could store sperm, the mating behavior would happen there, and then the females would swim on shore. It looks like mating is happening right there off the nesting beaches as well. So, just a whole different perspective. Green turtles are supposed to go through this, change at about 3 years of age, where they stop being omnivorous, eating everything, and becoming herbivorous, eating only plants. Well, it turns out that most of the green turtles around the world, all the green turtles around the world that we work with, spend most of their time eating jellyfish, just like the leatherback turtles. And jellyfish is not a plant. So, you know, it's just new information you cannot get effectively without a camera riding on their back with them into this hospitable environment. Next. Do we have time for a couple more videos? Okay, good. In that case, I need a little bit more water. Let's go ahead and run this. And again. Just to give you a bit of a sense of the breadth of some of the species we work with. Harbor seals. Spectacularly clumsy on land, but really, really wonderful and balletic underwater, where they spend the vast majority of their time. How do they feed? Well, it's curious because some of them feed on schooling fish. They're idiosyncratic. Some feed on schooling fish. Some do this. They go down to the bottom and they suck fish out of the sand. What's going to happen if you suck fish out of the sand? Yeah, I bet you know. You're going to get a whole stomach full of sand, plus the fish that you wanted to eat. Well, here's what you do. You go over to the water column and you throw up. You throw up, the sand filters out, and you go back at your leisure and have the meal that you intended in the first place. I mean, who'd have thunk that this would be an effective foraging strategy? Now we know it is. Hawaiian monk seals. This is kind of one of the examples, of really good examples, concrete examples of the conservation value of having these images. Hawaiian monk seals, quite threatened, probably one of the most threatened marine mammals in American waters, and huge areas of the ocean out in the Pacific, way northwestern Hawaiian Islands, have been set aside as protected habitat for them. Well, at that time, actually, it wasn't such a huge area. It was the small atolls where they hang out, and they're visible for the most part. Well, the problem was we didn't really know whether or not that was their critical habitat, critical hunting and foraging habitat. So Noah called me and said, listen, we need to try to do this. Find out if this is in fact all of the critical habitat that we need to be protecting. We got out there, we did years of work with them, but very quickly, almost immediately discovered that this protected habitat in these shallow coralline environments that they were obviously in was not important to them from an energetic perspective. They didn't feed in there at all. One would have thought, just looking at it, that they would have. But instead, they came out to this very barren habitat outside the protected area, in quite deep water. They dove down to the bottom, and that is where we discovered they do almost all of their foraging behavior in that unprotected habitat at that time. Well, as a result of these images, plus obviously other corroborating data, that whole deep habitat has now been protected because this turns out to be their critical foraging habitat. It's kind of cool. It's really wonderful. They create entire communities of organisms as they flip over rocks and expose the fish underneath. These sharks come in and try to grab them. Somewhere here, I don't know if the audio will play. It doesn't matter. They're screaming at the sharks saying, "Oh, this is my food." But here, you can, as a scientist, you want to categorize that fish. You want to count the fish. You want to see how much time they spend. And all this stuff we do and publish with our collaborators. So we published, at this point, probably somewhere on the order of, I think, 65 papers. And just made sure that we're doing this statistical analysis as well as the engagement with the public through National Geographic films. Next one. There are no passengers on Spaceship Earth. We are all crew. If I've got the time, if you haven't got the hook out yet, you guys have to see this. But if we can get the lights down, that would be really helpful because this stuff is dark. Let's go ahead and play this. Just to give you kind of an example of frankly, how wonderful this stuff is sometimes. Giant squid, Humboldt squid. They're the small giants. They're not the true giants, but they're the pseudo-giant squid. Wow, nobody knows anything about these guys in their natural habitat. The very first deployment, this is an image from the very first deployment. We had spent a long time developing capability, my team and I at Geographic, developing capability to be able to see these images in total darkness at depth. We had red headlights out shining out into the water column. It turns out that when we got these images back, we immediately realized something was awry because the animal carrying the Crittercam system was being attacked over and over and over again by the other squid. Right, it really sort of, until they finally pulled it off. Remember this image when you go to bed tonight. This one's really useful for sleeping. They not only attacked the squid that was carrying the camera, but they ripped it off the squid's back. They pulled it off. We built in, fail-safe mechanisms, and it's now floating back to the surface, and they're continuing to attack it. So it wasn't the squid. It's clear the camera was the problem. We're always looking for this kind of thing. And so we decided, okay, well, the first thing to do is turn the lights off and only work during the day. So we're now pretty convinced that the lights had a really antagonistic effect on the other squid, right? They just couldn't help but attack the lights. Now this is normal squid-to-squid interaction, we think. Where there's a lot of communication going on. All this flashing is one squid communicating with another or communicating with the group. We don't know what it means, but someday, because we now have the evidence, we can correlate behavior and response using imaging. Maybe someday you guys, down here in front, maybe someday you guys will be the ones who discover what that really means. Very, very cool. Still, even 35 years later, I just think this stuff is kind of magical. Anyhow, it's wonderful. Next slide. And don't worry, Drew, I'll wrap it up. So we publish everything, and I think I'll just let this slip through. Great, we need to do that. The other thing that I don't think I show here is that we have, communicating with people, getting people to care about this stuff is so important. So National Geographic's films inspired me when I was a kid, and so making those films was really important to me to help try to inspire other people. Well, I can't even read that. Oh, somewhere something incredible is waiting to be known, Carl Sagan. And it's really moved me along at this point. Anyway, we've worked all over the world, seen some magnificent things, but there is really, truly so much more to do. We've just scratched the surface. And a lot more people are now doing this. Now that it's proven now that we know that it can work. So we're going to start filling in some of those gaps here in the not-too-distant future. I don't know where that came from, but we'll leave it at that. Thank you, guys.
Before you get to your seat, I have a similar gift for you. It is the history of Vernon and Rockville.
What is that, 100-hour drive?
Well, this has been a treat, hasn't it? One of the blessings of tonight for me is seeing another side of Chris Lugenbuehl's life. Most of us know him through BPS. How many of us really understood the global influence and impact this man has had for decades? It's really wonderful. Praise the Lord. So, Chris, could you please unpack a little bit more about BPS?
In 1988, I went over to Wales because I had heard that the largest sea turtle ever recorded had died over there. So I wanted to go over there to find out how it died. And of course, I had been on a crusade for many years on getting people to stop dumping plastic because I knew the leatherback turtles were eating jellyfish and they were showing up full of plastic. So I heard about through the Associated Press that the largest sea turtle ever caught or actually died in a fisherman's net over in Wales. So I went over there. I brought a film crew over there with me, a professional photographer, a newspaper reporter, because I wanted to find out what the cause of death was. Well, I was over there, The turtle was 10 feet wide, 10 feet long, had a 52-inch neck, and I had the scientists do a necropsy. And sure enough, there was an industrial polyethylene bag blocking the small intestine, where digestion normally begins. So I donated that film all over the world to the BBC, all the US TV markets, and I called a friend of mine who was a drug and alcohol counselor. His name was Smokey, and he was working for Rockwell Hospital as a drug counselor. And so I was telling him I was all excited. We finally, the largest turtle ever recorded. They found the plastic, and I wanted to get the world to see, what's happening here, what we're doing to the world, to everything. So Smokey says to me, he says, when you get back to Connecticut, I want to talk to you. So I went up to his office, right up here in the annex, and he sits me down in the office. He says, Chris, he says, there was a guy that came in here, I've been trying to help him. He says, couldn't get him into treatment, the insurance companies, that nobody would cover him. And he says, I think he died. So he says, can you help? And back then, my real estate was dwindling. My commissions were no longer coming in. I just wasn't in a position to do what I would like to help, because for a long time I tried to help our brothers and sisters in need by helping them because of my own sobriety. And thank the Lord, it'll be 46 years this year. So I've always been on a crusade, but how could I help? And Smokey wanted to do something in his retirement. So I said, I left Union Church here, and I'm down here thinking, what can I do? I kept thinking of this one person. So I leave the annex, I go up Elm Street, I go up Ellington Avenue, I'm going down Middlebush Road, and here's this guy. I just thought of him. I waved him into my mother's driveway, and I said, we got to do something. Smokey's telling me this man, I think he died. Can you help? And he looked at me, he says, Chris, whatever you want, you got. So now, I go back here to Union Church and I says, we'd like to set something up here. We have someone that really believes, but no one would ever get anything from this. 100% of whatever we raise would always go to help the people. Union Church wouldn't get any funds, but can we work under your nonprofit? And thank the Lord, they said, you've got it. That's 1991. BPS is going on 33 years. Never fall short of any money. We've always been able to help people. And it's just, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe that day was really divine. I believe it was God, a God incidence. And ever since I've been sober, there's been so many miracles in my life. Having the opportunities to travel quite a bit all over the world, to be able to encourage Greg, it was such a blessing for me to have a man like Dr. Spatilla, who, when I first got sober, I went on a great adventures with him. So anyway, I'm so grateful that you guys are here tonight. A lot of my friends, relatives, people in recovery, we all know there's hope. We ask God in the morning to help us stay away from a drink and a drug. We thank Him at night. If we're sober at the end of the day, we're winners. So anyway, thanks for coming. We're having you can become part of the solution, walk, run, next week, next Saturday. And so anyone would love to have you come. We're putting a face on recovery. We never know who needs help. We want to help people. Please contact me if I can help anyone. And there's many of us in these rooms right here tonight that want to help. So God bless you and thank you for coming. And there's
something else is going on this month in South Windsor.
yeah, that's right. Over at South Windsor Library, we have a complete exhibit of the history of the David Luganbühl Research Institute, which I set up in my father's memory. And part of that exhibit's right over there too, right in the other room here in the chapel.
Terrific. Thanks, Chris. We're almost ready for Q&A, but we'll have our little round table first. So guys, if you can turn your lights on. We've looked in the rearview mirror for quite some time, and now we're going to conclude tonight's presentation with a look ahead in the windshield. So as we begin this little roundtable chat, what does all of this mean for us today as we step into the future? What action steps can we take?
I'll go first. Real simple, keep doing what you're doing. We Leatherback Trust, we spend about $400,000 a year in Costa Rica with people and turtles. And I had a donor ask me something about, well, if I give you money, you're going to keep doing this. I said, yeah, Frank and I are going to keep doing this till we don't wake up in the morning. I retired from Drexel University. I used to make a pretty good salary, and I had an endowment that I could spend for turtles. That went away when I retired. But I'm just doing as much work as I was doing before. I'm just not getting paid for it. I think I should get a salary. Anyway, we're just going to keep doing what we do in Costa Rica. And I think Chris is going to keep doing what he's doing. Greg's retired. Sure, he's not doing anything. But the rest of us are going to keep working hard.
Jim, you got a free book. What else could you want? Boy, getting greedy.
I'm going to have to put the value on my taxes as an honorarium.
What he said.
But what if the folks here who have just digested this great presentation, what can they do moving forward, whether it's in their own, in terms of respect for the environment or helping you folks, or what takeaways can people have when they walk out the door tonight?
That's a good point. There should be a takeaway. What's your takeaway? You should, to some extent, what's your passion? Help Chris with what he's doing, help the turtles, help us. You can go to Costa Rica and help out. You could volunteer. You could help save a pond where you live. You could stop somebody from screwing up the environment where you live. You could donate to help us with the turtles or help what Chris is doing. Find something that you get excited about outside of your normal waking up and going to bed, and be helpful. Everybody does a little bit. I used to get really frustrated that I couldn't save all the turtles in Costa Rica, and I realized that I could only do my one little part, and it's going to take other people to help out. So do a little bit every day, and while doing it, do what we've done, what all of us have done up here, and that is treat other people with respect, involve people as you can, educate people, and be nice to people. Don't be mean to people. There's enough people doing that.
One thing I've seen, a common thread with the three of you, is pursue your passion. And all of us have a God-given passion. Life is short, folks. I was telling the guys an expression I heard a couple of years ago that stuck with me. Life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it rolls. There are no reruns. Every day is a gift. You don't know if you'll be here tomorrow. So seize the moment.
I guess I would just add, you're doing it this evening. You're keeping your minds open, you're learning, you're here. You're making that effort, and I think that's so important for all of us to remember. Take that first step. The other thing that I remind Chris, you can talk more about this, is it's make it mobile. It doesn't have to be, mention that as well. We, after years of traveling all over the planet, Chris called me and said, hey, listen, we've got to talk here locally, and they should sit late with, we don't know anything about our snapping turtles. What do you think? We do a project. And it happened, right?
If you ever get a chance, go to YouTube and click on Snippy Sound.
I just thought of something. I thought of something everybody who's 18 years old and older can do. Find out, whoever's up for election, find out if they like turtles. If they don't like turtles, vote for the other person. Do they like turtles? Are they nice to people? Are they nice to turtles? Get out and vote. That's one thing you can certainly do.
You know, another takeaway is get out of your shell. I'm in recovery. I'm a recovering punaholic. What can I say? Well, I guess we'll go into Q&A. So I have a couple questions to prime the pump, and then Bill Martell will float around. If you have a question, raise your hand. That big turtle that your dad was part of catching came out of Long Island Sound. Are there leatherbacks in Long Island Sound?
They're feeding on the jellyfish, especially in the later months, August, September.
Okay. And we just have gone through Hurricane Helene and also Milton. What impact do hurricanes and typhoons have on sea turtles and other underwater creatures?
I think an adult sea turtle swimming along and a hurricane comes by, they just sort of bob along with it. I don't think like they drown or anything, because I think they can come to the surface and breathe. They kind of maybe surf over the big waves. But the nests on the shore, on the Gulf Coast, Frank Palladino had a student studying nests, and Helene came by and washed away half of her nests. The other half got washed away by Milton. So this year, that area has no reproduction of turtles successful, because they all got washed away by the hurricanes. On the other hand, on the Atlantic coast, they haven't had a hurricane, so those nests are doing better. I work at Topsail Beach with those people. They lost one nest when some hurricane or storm came by this summer, but they haven't lost the rest. So the big danger there is washing away the beach, losing that year's nests. That's probably the biggest effect that has.
So all along the Gulf of Mexico, they nest on beaches from Mexico to Texas to Louisiana?
Yeah, they nest mostly Florida and the Panhandle. I don't think they nest much in the other part of the Gulf. Oh no, well, Kemp's Ridley nests in Nuevo Mexico and Padre Island, so they nest over there.
Where are the greatest populations of leatherback turtles in the world?
Remaining populations are in the Caribbean and the west coast of Africa. But you saw the decline in our population in the Pacific. In the Atlantic, they're starting to see the same kind of decline. A big decline like there's half what there was 20 years ago. And so it may be the same causes.
So how many leatherback turtles do you think there are around the world total right now alive? A ballpark guess.
In the Pacific, there's certainly no more than 500 adults in the whole Pacific Ocean. In the Atlantic Ocean, I would guess 5,000 to 10,000 at the most.
I'm kind of curious. I know the answer to this, I think, but how do you remain optimistic?
Who said I was optimistic?
500 in the Pacific Ocean, that's almost an unbelievable number.
It's all your fault. They all died from carrying Crittercams. It's no different than if you're a recovering turtle biologist, you just got to every day and keep doing it, and hoping that in the future, you'll leave enough turtles for the next generation of people to take care of. Yeah, it's pretty discouraging if you think about it, so try not to think about it.
Well, I've seen news reports that in the Pacific Ocean, there's this humongous assortment of plastics that are floating on the ocean, and the wind and the current take them across from Japan and China over to Alaska and the western coast of the USA. Do you think all that plastic in the ocean is having an impact in the declining population? Like Chris was saying, they swallow plastic thinking they're jellyfish?
Yeah, I think so. The problem is that the plastic accumulates in the same place the hatchling turtles do. Currents take them in the same place. So it could be that the reason there are no adults coming is that all the hatchlings we produce went out and ate little bits of plastic. You don't know because you haven't been out there. So, but I think that's definitely a much bigger part of the problem than I thought it was when Chris first said it, as far as I can tell. The other thing that's going on, you sold the black dots of fishing. That does not include the Chinese fleet of 100,000 boats fishing in the Pacific Ocean. And if you catch a turtle or something you don't want, they call that bycatch, and they shovel it back overboard. Now the turtle may be alive or may be dead. But as far as we can tell, there's no such thing as bycatch on the Chinese fishing boat. It either gets eaten or gets turned into fish meal. So if a turtle goes on a Chinese boat, I suspect that it just stays there.
So all three of you gentlemen at one point had dark hair, I think. But if you have hair left, myself included, it's gray. So looking ahead to future generations and younger generations, how can you pass the torch, pass the mantle on this passion that you have, and pass it on to your students and younger generations? So when you cease to exist here, the mission still continues.
It sounds like you're doing that on a regular basis with all the students that you've got, all the people that you've trained, which is great. I did it for years through the National Geographic films, but also we engage with students on every level. All the work we did at my department at National Geographic. We had people, in our monk seal work. We had students involved in all phases of research. In fact, the last project we did with monk seals dealt with an entirely different problem than what I showed you here. And it was because the students, because the community really didn't trust, in Hawaii, the local communities really didn't trust the national government to solve this problem or to address it. We decided to engage with the students, the local Hawaiian Native students, first and foremost, to involve them in the project from the very beginning. And they then analyzed the data. The first to receive the data from us. We got they helped to retrieve the systems. They then analyzed the data from the Hawaiian monk seals and were able to communicate within their communities, what the actual results or what the truth was about the problem that we were studying. And very quickly the problem evaporated because people realized the truth was that the monk seals were not having the impact that everybody thought. Students told that story. The government didn't tell it. National Geographic didn't tell it. The students told that story. That was so valuable. So I think you're absolutely right. Connecting with you guys, with connecting with young people, every step of the way is so critically important.
Between the Otherback Trust and National Geographic, let's say we have science teachers at Rockville High School, Tolland High School, Ellington High School, UConn. Are there resources that science teachers on a junior high, high school, collegiate level can tap where they can bring, how many of you learned something new tonight? Right? I mean, are there resources where we can bring much of what you shared tonight and a lot more into the local classrooms?
Since I'm retired from Geographic, I can't speak for today. I can absolutely speak for the 30 years I was actively at Geographic. Yes, absolutely. We in fact, was responsible largely for producing a lot of educational research material that we produced. And that was, a lot of it was available, for free on a variety of resources. Geographic also incorporated quite a bit of it into some of their paid for curriculum, and I know that stuff got out into schools as well. I don't know what's happening today. You certainly have stories to tell on this because you're still actively involved.
Yeah, there's information on the Otherback Trust website. People can always contact us for more.
Excellent. Bill, Do we have anybody that has a question? Raise your hand and Bill will give you a mic so you can ask your question. I do ask that you ask a question. Sometimes you give somebody a mic and they use that opportunity to pontificate and state an opinion about something, but this is specifically for questions.
What is the average lifespan and reproductive lifespan of the turtle? And I did see in one of the slides the celebration after World War II with the sailor with the nurse in Times Square. Explain that.
I'll let Chris explain that, but the lifetime of a turtle, they start reproducing when they're probably 25 years old, and they can live to be 100.
When I was trying to get the boats to help catch some leatherbacks, I went up to Newport, Rhode Island, and I met a Portuguese fisherman up there, and he turned out, later I found out that he was the sailor that kissed the nurse on Times Square. So for over 20 years, he donated his commercial boats to help us. It was amazing.
When you're in those conference rooms with people that like to be in those meetings, what's your most compelling argument to get them to give you money for basically what isn't something that's going to add to their bottom line?
The most compelling argument is first to figure out what they'd be interested in. So if they're somebody who just wants to help, then it's the plight of the turtle and the value of the turtle for itself. If it's someone who maybe wants to see what the practicality is, then you talk about the turtle may be useful to humanity. So, I tell the story depending on what I can sense their interest is. Either way.
I saw that you were weighing the turtles. So what is the average? What did you determine the average weight to be of the leatherback, and was there a difference between males and females?
We only weighed the turtles. We only weighed the females that came ashore, and the turtles we studied ranged from 250 kilograms to 350 kilograms. 350 times 2.2 would be between 700 and 800 would be the biggest one, and then the other ones were more like 600 pounds. Males get bigger, like Chris's big turtle was much bigger than that. It's a couple thousand.
I'd like you to tell us more about on the critter cams. How do you recover them, and do you often lose some and they're gone forever?
Yeah, I was very concerned about that when I first started working with this. I thought we'd lose every other system. And surprisingly, over the years, because we work with people who know these animals well, people like Jim, we were able to sort of target the deployments very carefully to look at not only the questions of interest, but also what's realistic to do. And so for the first probably 25 years, we lost only about 6% of all those we deployed. So that meant we were very, very aggressive about finding a way to get them back. And we spent whatever it took, did whatever it took basically to get them back.
And then you go chasing them down with a boat. How do you, once you decide you want it?
Yeah, predominantly with the radio. We do radio tracking. So the system, what happens is, sort of are slightly positively buoyant. The computer controlled, the computer sends a signal to release the system from the animal. It floats back to the surface. An antenna sticks out of the water, sends a radio signal. We can triangulate on that signal, go out and pick it up in the middle of the ocean where it has to be. But of course, that would mean that we can't allow these animals to swim away 500 miles. We can only recover within 50 miles. We have to be cognizant of that from the get-go. And our research collaborators gave us good guidance for most of that. Now, we got to a point where we were confident enough in the systems that we could give them to our research collaborators without, my team being there, and our recovery rate started to reduce. You really got to be dedicated to getting these things back, or it's easy to say, oh, it's just too much work.
Yeah, if I was the researcher, I'd say, hey, I didn't pay for it. I'm not going to look for it. He'll give me another one.
You mentioned that leatherback turtles are one of the deepest divers, except for some whales. How deep do they go? How many feet below the sea?
I think they go down about 2,000 feet, like a whale, about as deep as a whale.
So my dad was in the submarine in World War II, and they have to design submarines very carefully because of the pressures the deeper you go. So,
well, I want to answer that question because yes, there's tremendous pressure at that kind of depth. If you think about it, every 33 feet is twice the atmospheric pressure. So 33 feet is 2 atmospheres. At 66 feet, it's 3 atmospheres. All the way down to 2,000 feet deep. So that's why it was so stupid of me to deploy it. You work with the leatherback turtle from the very beginning. Oh, it's a great experience and a wonderful opportunity. So thank you, Chris.
But if you look at that shell in the picture, it's a soft shell. It's mostly cartilage with bones in between. So when the turtle goes down deep, it actually can compress. And so the shell doesn't break. A hard shell turtle can't go that deep because the shell would crack. So that's part of the story of the leatherback is it has a soft, pliable shell, so it gets shriveled up like a prune, and then when it comes back up, it opens up again. Now the question is, what happens to the air in the lungs? Because a diver can get bends, right? And so I think it basically compresses all that air, and they avoid the bends. If you're diving, you're not compressing the air in your lungs, but in the turtle, it just squeezes it all out into the tissue.
Bill, do we have more questions?
Yes, thank you. First of all, gentlemen, thank you for such a great presentation. I love this kind of stuff. But anyway, can you give us a quick kind of overview of the importance of the turtle in keeping an ecological balance in the sea world?
Well, the leatherback primarily eats jellyfish, as far as we know. It may eat some other things, but jellyfish. And to some extent, it might control the amount of jellyfish out there if there are enough turtles. And so, part of the overall function of the ecosystem.
As a quick follow-up, there's been, you see in the scientific reports, there's been an explosion of jellyfish in the ocean. Do you feel that the loss of the turtles is contributing to that? There's no,
Yeah, the question is, there's been an explosion of jellyfish in the oceans. Do you think that the loss of leatherbacks is part of it? It could be. It's also that the ocean's gotten warmer and changes in currents and changes in productivity. But I would not be surprised that the leatherbacks, the lack of, they can eat like 60 kilograms of jellyfish a day. So they eat a lot of jellyfish. So if nobody's eating the jellyfish have more babies, and then the babies have more babies, you get a lot of jellyfish.
Thank you. So with the Crittercam and the way technology is advanced now, do you have Crittercams that when the turtle or whatever surfaces, it just automatically sends the video, digital data?
Yeah, that's a great question. Always dreamed of that. Well, while I was trying to find funding, would love to do that. The problem with videos that it's so much data. We were just transferring 3 gigs of a very small file just before the talk. That took 20 minutes. And turtles are on the surface for a few seconds, a few minutes maybe, and having alignment of the satellites just at the right time and so forth. It just really hasn't been viable until now. I think that there are some opportunities now. Some species that live close to the shore might be possible to do it by radio instead of satellite, which would be much more cost effective. But again, generally speaking, it's the short duration of the surface that is most limiting. Secondarily, it's the battery power required to do those bursts that's also being very limiting. Still a big challenge, not quite there yet. Terrestrial animals, we got closer with terrestrial animals because they're, that could be in constant communication with satellites. We actually got significant funding from the National Science Foundation to develop this concept with terrestrial animals in a coherent habitat and sort of prove the concept through that research program. Yeah, not for marine animals yet. That's just something I'm not familiar with. You may
Any other questions? We have one more.
Hi, I'm just curious, the videos that you have shown us this evening, are they available to be seen elsewhere, such as the squids, for example? I'd love to see.
Oh, the video's available, sorry. Yeah, because a lot of those, I formally retired from National Geographic 2 weeks ago. So I cannot say categorically, but I really haven't had to be in the office. I've been kind of following the pandemic. I haven't had to go back to the office, so there's stuff happening there that I'm not intimately familiar with anymore, like I was on a day-to-day basis. Back when I was fully in control of my department, my program, yes, I made stuff available because it was critical that was part of the whole mandate, the mandate that I established with National Geographic. Since I'm not there on a daily basis any longer, I don't know if anyone's as aggressively doing that as I did. There's stuff on YouTube, that's true. Yeah, and there's stuff on the Geographic website, but I'm not sure if it's as available as it used to be.
All right, thank you very much. This next question is directed to Chris. Chris, known you for a number of years, and being in recovery myself, what and where can we send donations, or is there information available that can help you with BPS?
Yes.
This is a vital, this to me is something that's, you guys are great, but he's fantastic. And I've been involved with this man for 40 years, and I think he probably gave up on me a few times, but you know what? I'm still here, I'm still standing, and he's still talking terrible, so.
Thank you. No, everyone wants to help us. It's BPS, in care of Union Church, 3 Elm Street, Rockville.
Okay, you got any literature on some people? I already forgot it. So
he has a display there, and I think he has some of the literature there, and you can go to bpsrockville.org. bpsrockville.com.
Okay, so it is.
Yeah. Yep. Great, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And you had one more question.
Thank you, Chris.
Now, the commercial fishermen, when they catch these turtles in their net, is there any kind of requirements that they turn in numbers and on locations that they catch these turtles at?
Any U.S. fishing boat has to record what they did. Did they catch it by hook, and did they let it go? What was its condition? The same thing for a net. You caught it in the net. And a lot of the, like the tuna fleet now in the Pacific is doing that. So the U.S. and some of the South American countries are doing that. Some countries are not necessarily participating so fully. So we have no idea what's happening on the Chinese fishing boats, and the Spanish boats, for example, aren't participating very well. So there's some unknowns out there.
So what, if I could follow up that, what would you estimate to be the percentage of all boats fishing that actually report?
10%?
10%. Not much.
Maybe 20. Well, I feel good today, 20%.
Okay, we'll get the mic to you, sir.
No, the lady.
Oh, wait, get the mic, because this is being recorded as well, so we need to capture the audio.
A couple years ago, I was in the Baltic, Baikal, Lake Baikal, and they have a very important, very ecosystem, very unique, and they have one very interesting creature, which is a fresh water seal. And if your critter camera could be put on those creatures, that would be absolutely tremendous, incredible thing. And I can offer a translation. I speak Russian, so I can translate the Russian seal. But it would be, do you work with international on the creatures cameras?
Oh, absolutely. We've done a lot of work internationally and love it. You know, I thrive on that stuff. So, and we've actually talked about working with in Lake Baikal. I don't know why it doesn't happen. I think part of it is just extremely challenging to logistically to get there, to get it supported by the government and to actually make it happen. We do all of this, you know, through permits to make sure it's done perfectly, properly. I don't remember the details of our Lake Baikal effort, but I was thrilled about the effort at the time. I just couldn't make it happen at the time. Maybe there's still opportunity there. Love to do it.
Well, let's call this a wrap with the questions. If you have questions for them afterwards, you can visit the displays in the chapel and chat with them offline. I want to thank you very much for coming tonight. Let's give it up for our three speakers. We also have a special announcement that a book is coming for children later in 2024 or in early 2025. The author, Jerry Matila, sorry I butchered your name, he's here tonight because it's a new children's book, Me and My Turtle. So this is coming very soon. We only have 3 copies right now as of tonight. This is one of the copies we have. Chris has a couple more over there. I encourage you to go up to the display after we conclude, and he can autograph a copy of the cover for your children, your grandchildren, whoever. That's a treat. With that, the new book was illustrated by the late Storm P. Robinson, whom Chris mentioned earlier. He was a Vietnam War vet who lived in Vernon and was very active in BPS. The cover design, illustration, editing, colorization, and book design were done by Faith Bougainville. And proceeds from the new book will go toward leatherback turtle research and conservation. Isn't that cool? You are the first speakers. So with that, you're welcome to go to the displays. We just turned on the lights, and our speakers will go out there and chat with you. Thanks again very much for coming. Welcome to Union Church.